of the PowerPoint presentation really quickly. Your host, would you mind confirming if you're seeing the screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Thank you very much.
Can we start?
Yes, please.
Hi, everyone. Excellencies, dear participants, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed. It is my honor to welcome you all to this video conference on the launch of the economic report titled Africa's Development Dynamics 2021, published under the theme Digital Transformation for Quality Jobs. This report is jointly produced by and published by the African Union Commission through its Department of Economic Affairs and the OECD Development Center. My name is Esther Azatanku. I'm the head of information in the African Union, and I will be the MC of this very important event. Having said this, this virtual ceremony for the launch of the economic report is divided into 3 segments. First, we will have the launch proper, followed by a presentation of the economic report, and finally, there will be a panel discussion. I wish to inform all our participants that there is a simultaneous interpretation for all the sessions into French and English. Now, let me invite His Excellency Victor Harrison, Commissioner for Economic Affairs of the African Union, to please give his welcome remarks. Commissioner, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you, Esther. Excellency, Monsieur Angel Gurria, secrétaire général de l'OCDE, Excellence Madame Amani Abouzed, commissaire aux infrastructures et énergie, Excellence Dr. Ibrahim Maki, directeur général de l'Agence de développement de l'Union africaine, l'EPAD, Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs les ministres, Excellence Monsieur Cohen Duens, directeur général de la coopération internationale et du développement de l'Union européenne, Excellence Monsieur Stephen Oswald, directeur général du plan Marshall avec l'Afrique, ministère fédéral de la coopération économique et du développement de l'Allemagne, mon cher ami Mario Pezzini, directeur du Centre de développement de l'OCDE, mesdames et messieurs les représentants du secteur privé, honorables invités, mesdames et messieurs, je pense qu'il n'est pas encore trop tard pour adresser à toutes et à tous mes meilleurs vœux pour une bonne et heureuse année 2021. L'ADD est le rapport de référence de l'Union africaine en matière économique. Il présente chaque année les politiques de développement récentes mises en œuvre et les performances économiques, sociales et institutionnelles sur le continent et dans les 5 régions. Il est le résultat d'une excellente collaboration entre le département des affaires économiques de l'Union africaine et le Centre de développement de l'OCDE et d'éminents chercheurs africains. Le thème de cette année sur la digitalisation ne pourrait pas être aussi opportune étant donné l'explosion de l'utilisation des outils de technologie digitale dans le monde à cause de la pandémie de la COVID-19, qui a fondamentalement changé la manière de travailler, de vivre, de produire et de vendre et d'acheter. Excellences, mesdames et messieurs, après 2 décennies de croissance économique soutenue et d'amélioration significative dans le secteur social, un vent d'optimisme régnait sur le continent africain avec le succès du lancement de la zone de libre-échange continentale. L'Afrique était sur la bonne voie pour transformer ses énormes potentialités afin d'accélérer le rythme de mise en œuvre de l'agenda 2063 et atteindre le niveau social observé dans d'autres régions du monde. Cependant, elle a été interrompue dans son plan, dans son élan, par l'une des pandémies les plus meurtrières que le monde ait jamais connues. Ce qui a commencé comme une simple crise sanitaire s'est rapidement transformé en crise économique, sociale et humanitaire et a totalement renversé les quelques progrès socio-économiques réalisés. La COVID-19 a causé en Afrique plusieurs milliers de malades et de morts, ramené des millions de personnes dans l'extrême pauvreté, l'insécurité alimentaire et la malnutrition, et a détruit des millions d'emplois. Selon notre estimation, le PIB africain a connu un recul de l'ordre de moins 4,9% à moins 2,1% en 2020. Une baisse significative des recettes fiscales, des transferts de fonds des migrants, des IDE et l'aide publique au développement et une augmentation importante de la dette extérieure en raison de l'augmentation des dépenses budgétaires pour faire face à la pandémie. Dès les premiers instants de l'apparition de la pandémie, des efforts importants pour non seulement limiter la propagation de la pandémie, mais aussi pour protéger les groupes vulnérables, atténuer les pertes économiques et mieux coordonner la mobilisation des ressources financières, tant au niveau extérieur et la négociation pour l'annulation totale de la dette extérieure de l'Afrique. Cependant, ces efforts restent limités compte tenu de l'ampleur des dommages que continue de causer la pandémie en Afrique. C'est pourquoi nous continuons à solliciter une annulation totale de la dette extérieure de l'Afrique et la réallocation des droits de tirage spéciaux du FMI pour relancer les économies africaines. Excellences, mesdames et messieurs, nous pensons que la pandémie offre une réelle opportunité à l'Afrique de changer véritablement son modèle de développement et des économies plus diversifiées, plus endogènes et plus résilientes vis-à-vis des chocs exogènes. La transformation structurelle des économies travers la transformation productive, la création de valeur ajoutée et l'industrialisation basée sur les matières premières et l'utilisation accrue de la digitalisation devrait permettre à l'Afrique de tirer meilleur profit de sa zone de libre-échange continentale, dont la mise en œuvre devrait accroître le commerce intra-africain de 15 à 25%, devrait accélérer la croissance économique et créer de nombreux emplois et opportunités d'épanouissement pour les femmes et les jeunes, ainsi qu'un développement inclusif et durable, rêve très cher aux pères fondateurs de l'Organisation de l'Unité africaine. L'on ne pouvait choisir un thème aussi pertinent pour ce rapport que la digitalisation. La digitalisation est un nouvel espoir pour l'Afrique. On estime que la digitalisation peut accélérer l'ouverture des sociétés africaines, peut booster l'entrepreneuriat productif, peut promouvoir une gouvernance transparente et peut contribuer à la diversification des économies pour les rendre plus résilientes aux chocs macroéconomiques et favoriser l'intégration régionale. Cependant, il est accompagné de nombreux défis et incertitudes auxquels ce rapport tente d'apporter des réponses à travers ces 4 axes prioritaires, à savoir assurer l'accès universel aux solutions numériques adaptées au contexte local et réduire les inégalités, en particulier entre femmes et hommes et entre le monde urbain et le monde rural. Et de 2, faire de la digitalisation un levier de productivité, notamment pour les PME, en facilitant l'accès au financement et un cadre juridique propice à l'innovation. Ensuite, développer des compétences spécifiques liées à la digitalisation afin d'assurer une adéquation entre l'offre et la demande du travail. Et enfin, coordonner les diverses stratégies du numérique au niveau continental, régional, national et local pour mieux prioriser, pour mettre en œuvre, suivre et évaluer les progrès. Je voudrais donc inviter nos éminents panélistes à analyser puis enrichir notre rapport en vue d'aider le continent à se digitaliser. Je saisis cette occasion pour exhorter les partenaires au développement et les investisseurs à se joindre à l'Union africaine pour apporter un soutien adéquat aux pays africains et au secteur privé dans la mise en œuvre des actions que je viens de citer. Je saisis cette occasion, ma dernière, pour féliciter les équipes de l'OCDE, de l'Union africaine, les chercheurs et les économistes pour la qualité du rapport et saluer l'esprit de partenariat qui a prévalu au cours de la rédaction du rapport. Je saisis également cette occasion pour remercier l'Union européenne et la coopération allemande pour leur fidèle soutien à l'élaboration du rapport. Je vous remercie de votre aimable attention.
Thank you very much, Excellency. We've just listened there to Victor Harrison, Commissioner of Economic Affairs, who was giving his welcome remark. It is now my honor to invite on the podium Angel Guria, Secretary General of the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, for her opening remarks. Please, you have the floor.
Merci, Victor. Comme vous voyez, Victor est en pleine forme. Hein? Merci. Et je voulais dire aussi que c'est ma dernière opportunité de lancer le Africa's Development Dynamics dans cette année de 2021. Et aussi, c'est le cas de Mario Pezzini. C'est une année de transition pour tous nous. Mais on est énormément fiers de ce partenariat qu'on a avec l'Union africaine. And so now let me move to English. Dear Victor, dear ministers, dear friends, Mario, I'm honored to launch the Africa's Development Dynamics Economic Report. Look, it's quite handsome. Huh? It now says under embargo, but that's because it was under embargo until right now. This is a joint effort led by the African Union Commission and the OECD Development Center. And this year it focuses on the critical issue of digital transformation for quality jobs. The third edition of this report, and it's the third edition in the partnership with the African Union, because of course we had been working with other African partners before for many, many years already. But the third edition of this report comes at a critical moment. COVID-19 hit a world already afflicted by major imbalances, by sluggish growth, by weak investment, deficient welfare systems, and the crisis effects have been devastating. Victor mentioned some of them, but our latest economic outlook estimated that the global economy, not for the whole of the world, contracted, reduced, shrunk by 4.2% in 2020. Now, Africa registered a slightly lower contraction, so it did somewhat better because it only shrunk by about 3%. However, this is still the continent's worst performance since the year 2000. GDP decreased in 41 African countries compared to 11 countries where the global financial crisis hit the continent in 2009. So here it was much, more widespread. Despite these important challenges, the COVID-19 crisis has also revealed new opportunities and capabilities for Africa's digital transformation. The digital agility of Africa's private and public actors has been evident during this time. For example, education ministries in over 27 African countries established e-learning platforms for students affected by school closures. Person-to-person mobile money transfers in Rwanda, for example, increased fourfold during the first month of the lockdown. And the African Union Commission is harnessing over 15 initiatives to accelerate Africa's digital transformation with the backing of the African Continental Free Trade Area. The topic of this report, digital transformation for quality jobs, is therefore very important, but also very timely. While these examples illustrate the extent to which digital savvy African entrepreneurs are devising responses to the continent's new needs, more must be done to fully harness the digital transformation's potential. The report highlights two key priorities. The first one is the need to make the most of digital technologies to trigger large-scale job creation. It is estimated that 29 million African youths will reach working age every year between now and 2030. Moreover, the 77 million Africans aged 15 to 29 with upper secondary or with tertiary education in 2020 will rise to 165 million by 2040. We'll have to find jobs for them. However, today, telecom companies in 43 African countries employ only 270,000 full-time workers. So there's a disconnect. Public policies must bring digital solutions to the non-digital economy. Agriculture, education, health, commerce, finance. So creating a facilitative environment for indirect job creation, in addition to, of course, the more obvious, more direct job creation in the digital sector, will require strong development strategies and a range of public policies. This includes ensuring equal access and the use of digital technologies, preparing Africa's workforce for the digital era, and supporting digital adoption among small and medium enterprises. Victor also referred to the plight and the challenges with small and medium enterprises. Second, the need to strengthen international cooperation to turn digitalization into a source of inclusion. How do you make the digital tools a source of inclusion? It requires a commitment of all stakeholders, private and public, as well as the continent's partners. One pressing issue is to reform the international tax system. This means tackling the tax challenges arising from the economy's growing digitalization, restoring stability in the international tax framework, and avoiding the risk of further uncoordinated unilateral tax measures, which will then lead to trade tensions and trade wars, and just at the time when we need it less. So the COVID-19 crisis has exacerbated these challenges. And the reason why, these challenges existed before, but it exacerbated the challenges. It just accelerated the challenges further because the increased digitalization of the economy also causes increasing pressures on public finances. All the reasons why Victor referred to the pressures on public finances of all the countries in Africa, all the reasons why the flows have reduced, the revenues of taxes, etc., and the expenditures have increased, and therefore the debt has increased. And also the decreasing public tolerance for profitable MNEs not paying their fair share of taxes. So the 137 members of the G20 OECD BEPS, the base erosion in profit shifting, it's called the inclusive framework. 137 members, many of them, of course, African, have developed a sound and solid basis for a future agreement in which we hope, to reach soon. It was originally scheduled for the end of last year. Now we're saying mid-2021. There needed to be also a change in administration in an important country, which will happen actually tomorrow. So once that is done, I think we'll probably be able to move forward. It is now vital for African governments to continue to contribute in this exercise and shape a new global tax architecture that will help the continent achieve its sustainable development objectives. You can trust the OECD to continue to facilitate engagement on tax matters, including through the Africa Initiative of the Global Forum on Transparency and Exchange of Information for Tax Purposes, and also what we call the Tax Inspectors Without Borders. So, distinguished guests, dear friends, ministers, with better policies, digital transformation can drive a more innovative, inclusive, and sustainable recovery. The OECD stands ready to deepen the current policy dialogue on digitalization in the several areas discussed in this report. Together, the African Union Commission and the OECD, through its Development Center and with the support of our European friends and our German friends, are committed to make the digital transformation a vector for human progress and contribute to achieving the African Union's Agenda 2063. Thank you all very much, and again, Happy New Year.
Thank you very much, Excellency. We just listened there to Mr. Angel Gurria, who is the Secretary General of the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, delivering his opening remarks. It is now my honor to invite on this podium Excellency Stella Tembisa Tambemni Abrahams, Minister of Communication, Telecommunications, and Postal Services for the Republic of South Africa. Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Master of Ceremonies, my sister Esther Tango, Mr. Angel Gurria, the Secretary General of the OECD, Mr. Victor Harrison, the AU Commissioner for Economic Affairs, Mr. Ahmad Talat, my Egyptian counterpart, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, compliments of the new season. Coming from a very challenging year where we saw the world riddled by COVID-19 pandemic, I'm thankful that we can still meet as leaders of various countries to discuss ways in which we can better the world, not just for us, but for the generations to come. The African Development Dynamics on Digital Transformation for Quality Jobs, a joint African Union Commission and OECD Development Flagship Report, is released at an opportune time. when our continent is developing strategies to insulate our populations from further COVID-19-induced economic and social difficulties. Mr. Angel Gaurier has correctly highlighted the devastating impact of COVID-19 on the economies and people of Africa. It is from this gloomy reality that as African leaders from government, private sector, and the civil society, we must begin to think innovatively and imagine a leapfrogged Africa that must take its rightful place amongst the nations of the world. Ladies and gentlemen, none of us acting alone in isolation can realize this true prosperity. The timing of the launch during the 6th PIDA week reinforces the centrality of this knowledge partnership between the two organizations in advancing Africa's development agenda. I would like to acknowledge both the OECD and the AUC leadership for the foresight in driving strong research and policy agenda. I was pleased to witness the coming into operation of the ACFTA on the 1st of January 2021. I have no doubt that this ACFTA will contribute to greater integration among the people of our continent and our economies. The ACFTA is now the largest free trade area in the world, measured by the number of countries participating, connecting 1.3 billion people with a combined gross domestic product valued at US $3.4 trillion. The African Development Dynamics provides us with a useful roadmap in the priority areas identified in the report, and I'm going to highlight those. The first one is investing in the infrastructure to overcome the digital divide, prioritizing youth and women, investing in digital skills, fostering productivity through technology, and cross-border coordination of country strategies. These are in line with our South African thinking. In South Africa, we have prioritized the release of spectrum and increased access to internet across the country. Related to this is our participation through various continental initiatives that are designed to foster greater regional integration. African governments are committed to implementing reforms and policies that can catapult their economies from this crisis. With a young population of our governments, recognize the need to use digital transformation to drive inclusive growth. Africa must prioritize investment in the necessary skills and resources to achieve these transformational objectives. Ladies and gentlemen, the joint AUC and OECD report on Africa's Development Dynamics 2021, namely the digital transformation for quality jobs, has aptly highlighted important issues that need to be accomplished. And these are the following: a need to support the ACFTA implementation, the achievement of the digital single market by 2030, strengthening Africa's role in the global digital economy, removal of barriers to innovation, streamlining procedures for regulatory compliance, and provide opportunities so that smaller firms can compete in the digital age. And lastly, deepening regional and continental cooperation for digital transformation. This report should be a contribution to the policy and regulatory discourse that is shaping the development of our economies amongst governments and our different stakeholders. It sets out some of the priorities that we face and examples of successful responses from amongst us. It is especially valuable in that it provides quantitative research on the trends and context facing our continent as a basis for analysis and proposals. The report also speaks to another problem area: the need to provide greater protection to the rapidly rising number of gig workers working for increasingly influential and powerful global service companies. Often, gig workers are presented as independent contractors who enjoy freedoms that ordinary workers do not have, like liberty to decide hours of work, working from home, and other benefits. there is a hidden side of the life of the gig workers, ladies and gentlemen. They are deprived some of the rights which are protected by the ILO Geneva Conventions, like the rights to collective bargaining, healthcare, minimum wage, and others. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, never before has the world been exposed to a potential extinction of the human species than we have experienced under COVID-19. Yet, it is equally true to say that COVID-19 and the superimposing manner in which the world experienced has created conditions for the developing world to leapfrog developments such that the African child too would be a beneficiary of the advancement of science and technology. Once more, I implore the leaders of our region, the African continent, to think beyond COVID-19 and envision a better world where science and technology is a true handmaiden of humanity in an inclusive way. Program Director, with that said, it is my pleasure to officially declare this meeting open, and I wish you all a fruitful deliberation, which will translate to improvement of the quality of life for the people of Africa. Let 2021 be the year of all things digital. Thank you so much, Madam Program Director.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency Stella. I think you were very clear there, and you are the Minister of Communication and Telecommunication and Postal Services of the Republic of South Africa. It is now my honor to invite Mr. Amer Talat, who is the Minister of Communication and Information Technology of the Arab Republic of Egypt. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Master of Ceremony. Excellencies, Mr. Angel Gorea, Secretary General OECD, my dear friend and colleague, Ms. Stella Abrahams, Minister of Communication, Telecommunications and Postal Services, South Africa, ladies and gentlemen, it is a pleasure to be virtually among you today on the occasion of the launch of the African Union Commission OECD Development Center report on Africa's development dynamics. The report has offered a thorough evidence of policy data per country and region to better understand and guide Africa's development trajectories and confirm the centrality of a robust ICT infrastructure to enable citizens to access all essential services. I would like to express my appreciation to the OECD Development Center that has deployed its comprehensive standards to provide a detailed roadmap for African development. The Development Center is acting as a very efficient bridge between OECD standard work with member countries and developing and emerging economies. In this context, I would like to refer to the digital transformation strategy that was collectively adopted by the African ICT ministers in October 2019 in Sharm el-Sheikh and eventually endorsed by our leaders during the 33rd summit in February 2020. The strategy recognizes the centrality of innovation and entrepreneurship in Africa. Witnessing the main highlights of the African digital transformation strategy, I read with great interest the main recommendations of the report. I would like to specifically mention the call for enhancing access to digital infrastructure, in addition to developing skills and facilitating the adoption of digital innovation by the informal sector. These points are well taken and in alignment with our orientation towards job creation in the continent. I would like to congratulate each African country that has excelled at one of the above pillars, whether through the mobile money revolution, the technology-enabled financial services, and the startups of the technology hubs. I cannot find a better opportunity to address your valuable recommendations to deepen regional and continental cooperation for digital transformation in what concerns bridging the spatial, social, and competitiveness gaps as mentioned in the report. In this respect, it gives me a great pleasure to note the progress made on the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. Egypt is one of the first countries that ratified this agreement, and we are ready to join forces with all African countries to connect supply chains from different countries and regions and to provide SMEs access to regional and sub-regional markets. We share the conviction that supranational cooperation can provide harmonized solutions in areas such as digital taxation, security, privacy, personal data protection, and cross-border data flows. Further, I note with satisfaction that Egypt is depicted as a leader in the area of technology hubs. And I'm happy to share with you a few points in this regard. We're fully aware that digital transformation leads to what the OECD labeled as creative destruction, through which new jobs are created, job-to-job transitions occur, and upskilling and reskilling take place. The Egyptian model we have adopted responds to this new reality of the job market, resting on a pyramidal plan. We target a large base of the population with essential skills through scalable programs with the private sector, moving up to more selective programs addressing the industry, whereby citizens are trained to establish their own SMEs through well-tailored training programs and a support system, moving up to training freelancers from all over Egypt. In this respect, technology hubs spread throughout the country are playing a major role in reaching Egypt's University for Informatics and the Digital Egyptian Builders Initiative. We target a highly trained core of calibers capable of competing on the international level. In terms of competitiveness, we have adopted a number of policies and regulations to facilitate the establishment of SMEs. Open consultations are ongoing to study the obstacles facing startups and working on solving them. Accelerators by the government and the private sector and academia are widespread. The financial sector has adopted an ambitious fintech strategy and is working on reforming startup regulations, including the adoption of a fintech sandbox. Finally, I look forward to knowing more about experiences of sister African countries on the bilateral and regional levels in response to the valuable report at hand. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Excellency Amer Talat, Minister of Communication and Information Technology of the Arab Republic of Egypt. With that, we have gone to the end of the first part of the launch of this Africa's Development Dynamics 2020. And it is now my honor to invite Mr. Mario Pazzini, who is the director of the OECD Development Center and special advisor of the OECD, to quickly, please, given the interest of time, to quickly summarize and present to us this very important report. Mr. Mario Pazzini, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Esther. It's a pleasure to be with you, as it is a pleasure to be with Victor Harrison and Angel Gurria. The three of us have the last opportunity to speak about this report, and I will do as brief as possible, as I know that we have many constraints. But let me also say good afternoon to Minister Stella Sawubona, or Molo, as you prefer, and to Amor Taloat, together with Cons, with Ibrahim, and with Stefan Oswald, because we have had a great cooperation in the preparation of all this series of reports with the European Union and also with BMZ and Stefan in particular. Let me say that this is not really a report. I think this is a platform, because to produce it, we have always convened different actors around the table, and we are very pleased that we have created a series of themes of African experts from Africa to discuss every year the preparation of our report. It's obvious that the partnership with the African Union has been and will be crucial in this respect. 3 points I would like to stress because I am just highlighting things that you all have already said. One is about the why, then the what, and finally the how. So for what concern the why, yes, African digital transformation must be part of a new deal for the global recovery. The situation we have heard from the Secretary General of the global economy is not great, and it was not great before the COVID crisis. And then Africa is an important engine for this global recovery we are aiming at. Africa annual GDP growth was second after Asia. For 20 years, it was at an average of 4.5. The domestic demand in Africa is important to stress, accounted for 69% of African growth during all this period, which means that there is an endogenous strength that was operating and is still operating. The foreign direct investment flows to Africa grew at 8.5% per year. And by 2050, 69% of the total increase in global labor force will be in Africa, and investment in Africa's youth now as high return in the future. Africa has been less hit by the crisis. We know in 2020, global economy contracted by 4.2. By comparison, African GDP contracted by 2.6. And partly this is thanks to the good policy response. Kenya, Ghana, Ethiopia, Senegal fare better than most G20 countries, according with the Foreign Policy COVID-19 Global Response Index. Now, the COVID-19 crisis is in reality accelerating African digital transformation, which must form a key part of a new global deal for recovery. Before the crisis, Africa had over 480 million mobile money accounts, which is highest in the world. And within the first months of the lockdown, person-to-person mobile money transfers in Rwanda, just to take an example, increased fourfold. Obviously, however, African governments are facing today's crisis with lower financial resources than in 2009. Over 2010, 2018, domestic revenues per capita decreased by 18% and external financial flows per capita by 5%. And obviously this anticipates that 40 million people could fall back into extreme poverty by 2021 in sub-Saharan Africa. But I repeat, Africa can be a crucial engine for the global recovery. And that is why we have produced this report. And then let me go to the what. Well, policy for digital transformation must focus on the indirect jobs creation that come from diffusing digital technology to non-digital sector. Very often we concentrate on what digital industry can provide, but most digitalization strategies in Africa continue to focus in digital sector, whilst the point is also the dissemination of digital technology as a kind of horizontal platform for the industrialization that Agenda 2068 has always aimed at. In fact, telecom company, the Secretary General of the OECD was recalling, they employ 270,000 full-time workers, which is obviously a tiny part of the employment which is required. The large part will come from the adoption of technologies related to digital in the existing or in the new firms created in Africa. And to maximize the impact of this technology, obviously we have to look at inequality in digital access and use that prevent the digital diffusion. The gaps are well known. Is an access to use internet is very discriminating in terms of space, gender, education levels, and employment status. So we need to think about diffusing digital technology to all economic sectors. Let me conclude now by emphasizing the how, and in particular, 4 pillars that we stress in this report. First, closing the spatial gap. By promoting digital innovation, only 35% of intermediary cities are connected to fiber optic networks. Let me say that's crucial. We know that Africa will get to the same level of urbanization of Europe in half of the time that it took to Europe. If this will mean enlarging only very large cities and creating geographical monsters, it will be a problem. If we will be able to strengthen the network of small and medium-sized cities, the story will be largely different. But at present, only 17% of African population can afford 1 gigabyte of data. That means what we need to have this conference now, 2 hours of teleconferencing is 1 gigabyte. And this is compared to what happened in Latin America. It's not 17%, it's 37% of the population that have access to this capacity, and in Asia, 47. Second pillar, we need to close the competitiveness gap for African SMEs. The ecosystem for entrepreneurs remains fragile. Let me be clear on this point. This is not just the generic environment conducive to growth. This is how we can provide the local places where the small firms are located with services to control the quality of the product, with information about accounting, about fashion trends, and so on. Only 5 cities at present host half of the African startups. I mean, Cape Town, Lagos, Johannesburg, Nairobi, and Cairo. And obviously we need to enlarge the amount of spaces that are competitive. I'm closing. We need to close the social gap because adopting education system that scale up vocational and technological training is crucial. And finally, my last point, we need a continental and international coordination. Only 28 African countries have personal data protection legislation in place, while 11 have adopted substantive laws on cybercrime. This is too little. We must form part of a global New Deal to building back better, but also to strengthen further all the comparative advantages and competitive advantages that Africa has and require just to be exploited. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mario Pazzini, for that very brilliant presentation. That was very succinct and a very good summary. It is now open for the panel discussion, and I want to invite our panelists. We will have Mr. Quen Doyin, who is the Director General for International Cooperation and Development of the European Union, European Commission, rather. And we will have Mr. Ibrahim Mayaki, who is the Chief Executive Officer, African Union Development Agency, New Partnership for Africa's Development. And we will have Mr. Safan Oswald, Director General of for Marshall Plan with Africa Displacement and Migration, Federal Ministry of Economic Cooperation and Development, BMZ, Germany. We will have Magdalene Chapkamon, Founder and Executive Director, Eldo Hub. And then finally, we will have Sainabu Dia, the CEO for Global Minds Consulting Groups. For the first discussant, I will invite Mr. Quen Doyin, Director General for International Cooperation and Development, DEFCO, European Commission. And I will go with the first question addressed to you. The European Union Recovery Plan and long-term budget speak to the importance of the digital transition at home, but also around the world. How will the recently launched African Union D4D hub contribute to boost joint partnerships and investment in the African digital economy in practical terms? That's the number one question for you, Mr. Gwen. And for the second question, how can the European Union be an effective partner for Africa's digital transformation and job creation? Since 1st January 2021, the African Union is now implementing the AFCFTA, which aims to deploy a single digital market for Africa. Since the European Union has the world's most integrated single digital market, what can the African Union learn from the European Union to developing the African single digital market? Now the floor is open for our first discussant, Mr. Quen Doings. Please, you have the floor.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. And maybe first of all, really to say what a great pleasure it is to be on this panel with all the other distinguished speakers on the first day of this PIDA week. And I would really want to congratulate the African Union Commission, the OECD Development Center, Mario. You're leaving with a bang for the third edition of this real flagship economic report. And I think that we've all been able to listen to Mr. Guria, to Mario Pezzini, to get an idea of the substance, and to Victor Harrison, of course, to get an idea of the substance that lies in this report. And I think that in the days we live in, the focus on digital transformation could not be more relevant. So I maybe want to contribute essentially with three big messages. The first one is about common purpose. I really think that the next frontier of sustainable development is digital, and that goes for Africa as it goes for Europe, as it goes for all the other parts of the world. And it's clearly that we are resolved to act on this. I remember more than 11 months ago, before COVID-19 struck us all, when the European Commission traveled to Addis Ababa for the traditional, normally yearly meeting we have between the European Commission and the African Union Commission. Our two commissions discussed what could be the potential priorities that we should pursue for the EU-AU partnership in view of the next summit. And they agreed on a number of topics, and one of them on top of the agenda was digital transformation and the idea that we should work together to put this as one of the center stages of our future partnership. And I think that COVID-19 has only reinforced that determination. I think that we've all seen how we would have struggled to go through this crisis if we not had all the digital technologies at our disposal. So I think that we've made a start there, and I think that the common purpose of working on this has only been strengthened. My second message is that the Africa-Europe Digital Partnership is really a partnership. It's going to be a two-way street where Europe and Africa have plenty to learn from each other. And that's maybe a little tweak to the question you asked me, what can Europe bring to Africa? I think this is going to be a two-way street, because if I look at what is happening in Africa on innovation when it comes to instant payment systems, I mean, reference has been made to Rwanda, to the M-Pesa in Kenya, or to the use of mobile telecom technologies, I see how far and how dynamic and innovative things are happening in Africa. And I've had the experience in my current and previous functions to follow some of this. And there's actually a lot that is happening now in Africa that we could actually very well make use of in Europe. On the other hand, obviously, Europe has quite some experience in having now the world's most integrated single market, also single digital market. And we hope that when we can bring all those experiences together, that actually something good can come out of it. Of course, we're very proud in Europe, notably on what we have done in terms of putting people at the center of technologies, or putting technologies at the service of people. I think we've got very strong leadership on ensuring privacy for our citizens, on security of e-commerce, on safety of industrial data, and so on. And so I believe a lot that this partnership on digital can be really beneficial. And we will come at that with our full strength of Team Europe, meaning the EU and our member states. And I think that with Stefan here around the table, we have the perfect example of how Europe comes together, EU plus member states, to really bring the best of what we can bring to the table. And my third point, and relates to your second question as well, is that I think we have the tools to make this partnership work. And the two questions you asked are linked to those tools. We've launched in December last year the Digital for Development Hub, which is actually a worldwide hub where we see different geographic sections operating, and the African one is the first one. And it follows the recommendations of the work that had been ongoing between an EU and an AU digital economic task force that produced a report. And through the platform, we bring African and European private sector, civil society, institutions, the public, together to look at a number of things. It's really a machine of ideas on how can we scale up investments? How can we stimulate incubators for startups? How can we share best practices and ideas on regulatory frameworks? How can we foster skills, education, entrepreneurship? And how can we best bridge the digital divide through affordable internet access, and then with specific attention for women and for young people? And so far, the D4D Hub has been mobilizing funding, but especially mobilizing ideas. So with the D4D Hub, we have an excellent tool, an excellent platform in place to drive this EU-AU digital partnership. And the second element is, of course, the deepening of the continental cooperation on digital transformation. We really want to turn, hope to become one of the partners of reference for the African Union on the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. No surprise, I guess, that we emotionally link with this, because it's so much part also of our European experience. So this endeavor that Africa has embarked upon on an African Continental Free Trade Agreement is really that touches us not just rationally but also emotionally. And we are in regular contact now with the Secretary General as well, with Mamkele Mene, to see what kind of support he needs, what kind of support that the African Union needs, and that we can bring up. And obviously, this will touch upon a number of areas that are all of crucial importance for the CFTA, but definitely the digital transformation, the creation of a digital continental free market, the issues related to e-commerce, to digital trade. These are all things we really look forward working on with them. So really great to have the opportunity to be on the panel to discuss on these and other things today, and to confirm that when it comes to the digital agenda, I think Europe and Africa have a great future together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Colin Doyin. Europe and Africa have a very important role to play to enhance the digital agenda. That's what I stake. And I don't want to go into your communication because it was very clear. And for the interest of time, I will just quickly invite our next discussion. And here we have Mr. Ibrahim Asen Mayaki, who is Chief Executive Officer, African Union Development Agency, New Partnership for Africa's Development. Please, Mr. Mayaki, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. I'm very pleased to be in this panel. And let me really congratulate once more Commissioner Harrison and Mario Pezzini, because each one of the reports that have been produced have had a lasting impact. And how do you measure the impact of a report? The best indicator is how it is seized by policymakers
whether in terms of seizing recommendation, whether in terms of using the analytical approach. These indicators, when we look at them, we can see the impact of the report. I see that you didn't ask, me a question.
I was just about to go to the questions. I wanted you first to say one word, and now I say the questions to you, addressed to you, Excellency, is many experts agree that the pandemic will erase the progress of the last 10 years in Africa. How can these losses of, how can these losses be, offset while keeping the focus on strengthening regional values chain and moving forward or toward continental integration? That's number one. And number two, the importance of digital technology, accentuated by the crisis, calls for increased investment in education, training, and capacity building. How can the AUDA NEPAD help monitor the implementation of policies to activities or achieve the goals? Those are the two questions for you, Excellency. You have the floor now.
Thank you very much. I think there are at least 5 questions in the 2, but I will try. And thank you again. I'll start by an anecdote, which is not an anecdote, but I call it like that. I'm chairing a global alliance against cholera, which is worldwide. And what we do, because cholera has been a pandemic for in the past centuries. And one of the objectives that we have as an alliance is to work on 2 pillars, advocacy on the one hand and communication on the other hand. And we work a lot in DRC, especially in the Uvira zone. And through preventive measures, we have shown that we could eradicate cholera. It's a very concrete example, but fundamentally, what we put the emphasis on is a sound communication with the communities. So my first point is, one of the greatest consequences of this pandemic in the continent is that it is producing a silent revolution in governance systems. Because governments are faced with issues of accountability. If they lie, their lies are shown immediately to the public. If they hesitate, the hesitation are quite obvious. So it's the king government is naked. And I think it's when we have discussions with our focal points throughout the continent, what we do realize is that there is a silent change in governmental behavior, and the governments who are doing better are those who really succeed in communicating adequately with their communities at the basis, those who are transparent, and those who don't shy away from their responsibilities. You will tell me, well, it's a tautology because it can be applied to many of the domains, but one of the main consequences of a pandemic in this continent will be reform of governance systems, not auto-reforms. The government will not auto-reform themselves. These reforms will come from external actors, non-state actors, civil society, private sector, etc. The 80% of the Africans who have a job work in a micro, small, or medium enterprise, which is in the informal sector. These these segments of population are being hardly hit, they will react. Those who can't access medicine will also react. So there is a silent revolution which is taking place. And it also happens on, and that's my second point, on the issue of digital transformation. I don't think governments will be the leaders of digital transformation in Africa because they are not the leaders already. Digital transformation is happening bottom up through a lot of startups, innovative groups, fintechs, herb techs, etc. So the change is not coming from the government, who, by the way, invest less than 0.8% of the GDP in science, technology, and innovation. The change is coming from actors who do not have resources coming from the governments and who are producing innovation. So if we do not seize this reality, we might go into a path and define strategies that will lead us nowhere. This is very important. I'm 69 years old. So I won't see these changes happen, but I can have the intuition of their happenings through the way we communicate with all these innovators. So let's be vigilant on the fact that transformations, and in particular digital transformation, will come from outside of a public sphere. And then I want to, go to my third point. This very good report should be translated, I'm talking seriously, as a comic book which can be disseminated everywhere. It should be translated in local languages. It should not be shared because between us who are convinced of the things that we are saying. And this is about really communication. I think the way we communicate the products that we produce, the reports that we produce, that communication has to take into account the changes that are taking place systemically. These are systemic changes that are taking place. So the governments who will understand that these systemic changes are taking place, well, they will go towards adaptive solutions. Now, I got a bit away from your question on value chains and regional integration and etc., but it's all linked. It's all linked because the actors who are the most motivated to go towards the creation of value chains are these micro, small, and medium enterprises in the informal sector that I was talking about. And as you know, when we try to trade, they face non-tariff barriers. And non-tariff barriers are coming from where? They are coming from a governmental behavior. These are policemen and custom officers and so on. So how do they perceive the state? They perceive the state as an obstacle to their capacity to trade. So constructing value chains equally cannot be done without their participation. So what I'm advocating for, and I think many leaders in the continent are sensing that, is a really change in paradigms in the way governments behave, communicate, design policies, so that they are much more open, so that we go towards a co-production of policies. not top-down imposed policies. Because anyway, when a government invests less than 0.8% in science and technology and innovation, whatever policy it designs will not transform or change the system. So it's much better to co-produce a policy with those who are already innovating. So it's a fundamental issue that I wanted to raise, and which for me will shape the whole implementation of a continental free trade agreement. The continental free trade agreement will need to be understood by all these actors I'm talking about. And they will need to see reflected in public policies and governmental behavior that there is a coherence between what is said and what is being implemented. If I'm a micro, small, and medium entrepreneur, and I want to cross the border in the corridor Lagos-Abidjan, and I'm faced by, enormous obstacles, the significance of the CFTA will be nil for me. So, communication, transparency, education, co-production, these will be the main factors that will lead us to that great decision that we have taken, and which will be which will help us really move forward as a continent, which is the CFTA. But let's be careful, and let's be very frank and honest with ourselves. The more we are frank and honest with ourselves, the better we see the obstacles and the better we design the solutions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Excellency Mayaki. The more we are frank with ourselves, the more we see and design solutions. It is now my honor to invite quickly the next discussant, Stefan Oswald. He is the Director General for Marshall Plan with Africa, Displacement and Migration, Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, Germany. The question to you is, how are African governments and their development partners working together to ensure funding for economic recovery and transformation, despite evidence of decreasing levels of external and internal sources of financing available on the continent? That's number one. And leveraging economic potential and creating jobs are the cornerstones of Germany's cooperation strategy with Africa, notably through its Marshall Plan with Africa. How can digitalization propel this dual objective towards the achievement of Agenda 2063? Please, you have the floor, Stefan Oswald.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Moderator. It's a pleasure, as with my colleagues, to be part of this wonderful panel, and allow me also to extend my congratulations to my dear friend Mario and to Victor Harrison for the wonderful report, which is another light tower in this joint cooperation of producing this series of reports. Germany is therefore proud to be a partner of the African Development Dynamics Report. Coming to your question, Esther, it is of course one very important point that financing in times of the pandemic is crucial. And the report focuses on how to finance Africa's development agenda despite the 2020 global economic crisis. Except for a few exceptions on the continent, let's say the pandemic was less of a medical crisis, it was more of an economic crisis, and from the first second onwards. And therefore, my ministry, right from the beginning on, decided to reprogram around 1 billion euros for giving and flanking support to our African partners towards dealing with the crisis. And additionally, we managed to convince our parliament to make available another 3 billion euros for additional assistance towards assisting countries fighting the crisis in 2020 and 2021. So these were additional funds. And while the current focus is on crisis response, we should think really now about the time beyond. Sound economic policies, and I think everything we need is part of the Agenda 2063. And I think all member countries, and that is, let's say, the key message of the Marshall Plan with Africa, we should strive to make Agenda 2063 happen. And let's say, amidst all the challenges, I think it was also made very clear the implementation and the launching of the African Continental Free Trade Area, Ibrahim Mayaki was dwelling on it, Condons was dwelling on it, is, I think, really, really important. And I think it is really another light tower on, let's say, African joint policy making. And Condons already made it very clear, the European Union and also the member states are going to join you in making that happen. I think if there is something the European Union and its member states are really knowledgeable upon, is creating a common market. Our Marshall Plan with Africa focuses particularly on reform-oriented countries. I think some of these instruments might also be useful in implementing and giving also some lessons for those countries who are not yet joining the Compact with Africa initiative. I think it is really important to focus not to build back better, to recover better than we were previously. And I think digitization is one important factor. I think there is little positive about COVID. But one positive aspect, it really propelled the digitization and give it a real push. I think if you had strived to have this meeting we have today, about a year ago, we would have not managed. But of course, we were pushed to communicate, let's say, personal interaction free. And I think this gave us and the real push towards. Germany already in 2015 launched an initiative on a strategic partnership on technology with Africa. And I think among this strategic partnership, digitization is a very important factor and will be pushed forward. And it is also part of the BMZ digital strategy. And especially my colleague, Günther Noke, who is, by the way, also the Africa advisor to our chancellor, he's a real pusher towards digitization. Just to make one example, he created a digital platform for European and German African diaspora to enable them to assist, let's say, startups in their home countries. So with initiatives like this and centers for digitization, I think also Germany is playing a very important role, also to link private sector and public sector to make it happen. I think also Ibrahim Mayaki made that point. We cannot rely on, let's say, private initiatives. We also need to, mobilize really the private sector. So data for development and artificial intelligence is also another point. And also Kondons dwelled already on the D4D hub, which was launched under our presidency in December. And I think we have a good future in this regard. But we need not to forget infrastructure is needed to foster a continent-wide digital infrastructure at all levels. And I think in this regard, it is very important that we have this launch of the report during the PIDA week, and Germany has been and will continue to be a reliable supporter of PIDA. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That was very clear. Now it is my honor to invite our last discussant, and she is Magdalene Chepkemwa, Eldo Herb. The questions to Madeleine is, in East Africa, Kenya is a prime example of very rapid expansion of fintech, but the expansion is not as rapid in other regions like Central Africa. What can other African countries learn from Kenya's experience to develop their fintech potentials fast and optimally? That's number one. And the second question, how can technology coupled with appropriate policy tools alleviate territorial, social, and competitive disparities related to access to digital tools and capacity? I will stop there for the interest of time. Please, you have the floor. Magdalene Chepkemwa.
Thank you very much, Esther, and thank you also to the team as well, and for the launching of the great reports that has shown us that young people can benefit from the digital economy, as well as also we can leverage on infrastructure to be able to grow our Africa digital economy. So I'll just go ahead and answer the questions. That's in Africa, why Kenya is successful, especially in terms of the financial technology. So indeed, financial technology has been a major force driving change in Kenya, with mobile money platform revolutionizing financial access, improving financial inclusion, and this has really catalyzed has really served as a catalyst for innovation in other sectors such as e-commerce, agriculture, healthcare, education, and infrastructure. With that, digital platforms are expanding in Kenya. Many Kenyans are currently in digitally enabled work, like online work. There's the taxi drivers, Uber, and all the other local taxi applications that have come up. There's buying and selling and others. All this would not have been possible without financial flow, and through fintech, this has been made possible. And and I've had some of the panelists mention about M-Pesa. We cannot talk about innovation and technology in Kenya without mentioning M-Pesa. You will see M-Pesa around Kenya from rural, peri-urban, and then even the urban centers. And this is the main mobile money transfer platform in Kenya, which has grown to over 40 million users in 2020. And we cannot underestimate the role the government played. When M-Pesa was being launched, I remember the Kenya Bankers Association was strongly against it. But the Kenyan government stood their ground, and they created an enabling environment for M-Pesa and other fintech solutions to thrive in Kenya. And through M-Pesa, we've seen that Kenya has a vibrant e-commerce ecosystem that has shown steady growth, and especially among small and medium businesses. And as you know, an e-commerce has three elements. That's information flow. We need a platform that will connect buyers and sellers. And once these buyers and sellers have been connected, they need financial flow. That's the second one, financial flow. So once they have already been connected, they need a means to pay each other. That means the buyer being able to pay the seller. And that's where this has been made possible with financial fintech in Kenya, especially with the support from M-Pesa. And if you look at when the Kenya Bankers Association, most banking institutions have leveraged on technology and have incorporated mobile money transfer in their organization. And this has really enabled financial flow, and that's why the e-commerce ecosystem is vibrant in Kenya. And of course, lastly, that's the logistics. Once that payment has been made, products need to be delivered to the buyers. So one thing which is very key and which has come out is that we need the government's support to be able to create an enabling environment to be successful. So secondly is that Kenya government invested heavily on technology infrastructure like fiber optics, which ensure that the internet is accessible and fast across the country, and the internet is very affordable in Kenya. In Kenya, 1 GB is $1. And if you compare with other countries, especially in Central Africa, 1 GB can go up to $75. So that's another thing which the Kenyan, that's why the Kenya has been very successful. Another thing is a steady flow of foreign direct investment, private equity into the tech startups in Kenya. And now Kenya is currently ranked at third in Africa in terms of tech startup investment. This has enabled the growth of digital solutions and in enabling the integration of mobile money transfer. And this has led to Kenya thriving in the fintech space. Another thing, last but not least, the favorable policies. Kenyan government has ensured that there are favorable policies for digital solutions to be able to grow. And this has really made it possible for us to be a leader in terms of fintech. Lastly is that currently government is currently creating and proposing policies to create an enabling environment for digital innovations and new technologies that will make Kenya a leader in the digital economy, and financial technology will play a key role in accelerating that growth. So that's for the first, that's my response for the first question. For the second question, I would like to address is that's how can technology alleviate, so currently technology with the support of strong policies can be able to see regional economic growth in digital trade through e-commerce platforms that enables access to local and global markets. And I've used e-commerce platform because I believe that e-commerce can really transform Africa and can really lead to sustainable development in Africa. And yes, some of the things which we really probably in Africa needs to work on is the policies mostly, and especially that Africa has 54 countries, and how can we trade amongst each other? And you know, one of the things which we can leverage on is e-commerce. And you know, if you compare Africa and China, for example, Africa has 1 billion people with 54 states, and you know, China, for example, has 1 billion people, but only under one government. So if we are to trade with each other, we have to counter all the other states. But now in China, it's easy for them to be able to work that. So that's some of the things which maybe we need to look at as different stakeholders in Africa. So the economic growth of such region will ensure regional balance. If you look at, and I'm going to give an example of Alibaba platform, which is called Taobao. It is one of the largest online marketplace by volume among emerging economies across the world. And it allows entrepreneurs such as tea growers, furniture makers, suitcase manufacturers, and other small producers and merchants, including those from remote villages, to reach their customers in Shanghai and Beijing, and even overseas, easily and cheaply. Previously, these entrepreneurs were unable to sell directly in sufficiently large volume because of high intermediary charges. This growth will impact both the socioeconomic factors, competitive disparities through technology, and elevated economic growth. There will be a bit of equality and equitable distribution of resources and opportunities that solve the problems of regional balance. So thank you very much, Esther. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Magdalene Chepkomwa. You are the founder of the Eldo Hub, and we've just listened there to you. With that, we have come to the end of this very rich panel discussion. I don't see any hands raised from the participants to show interest of reacting, but I can open the floor to any other of the resource people on the table. If you have any reaction to any of the discussant on the table, please just raise your hand and then you take the floor before we go to the closing ceremony. Please, the floor is open. I don't see, just you show your hand, and if there is any reaction from any one of you on the table, we can take the hands and get a quick one. I don't see any hand as well, which means that everything was clear, because obviously it was just a launch of a report, a very important report, and the information has been put out for the public. And after this, everybody will know now that we have a new report that is called Africa's Development Dynamics 2021, which has been published jointly by the OECD and the African Union, and the theme is Digital Transformation for Quality Jobs. With this, it is my honor now to invite His Excellency Victor Harrison, Commissioner for Economic Affairs, to give us his closing remarks. Excellence, vous avez la parole.
Thank you, thank you. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank the eminent panelists who participated in the event ADD 2021 report launch. If the issue of jobs was considered from the first edition of ADD in 2018, the report of Department of Economic Affairs, Socio-economic impact of COVID-19 in Africa, an opportunity to build more indigenous and resilient economies in September 2020, identified digital transformation among the priority sectors for the recovery of African economies. African IDD 2021 report, enriched by the discussion this afternoon, should help African countries to better achieve digital transformation. The participation of representatives of partners and private sector in this discussion is highly appreciated, since digital transformation is a noble challenge that requires the cooperation of all stakeholders. Finally, I hope that African countries and the new African Union Commission can consider the valued ADD analysis and implement the relevant ADD recommendation. I thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Excellency Commissioner for Economic Affairs at the African Union. With these excellencies, dear participants, we have come to the end of the launch of the report, the economic report. And we want to thank you all for your contribution during this very important event. And I want to remind all of you that it has been recorded and the YouTube and videos could be found on the platform of the PIDA week. So you just have to go on Google and then you go to the PIDA week and you'll have all the events that have been organized during this period. With this, I will say Happy New Year to all. Thank you, Excellencies, and hope to see you very soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Happy New Year.